Can love truly conquer all, even in an age of strict societal rules and brutal consequences? Can hearts once entwined ever truly separate without leaving scars? From the 11th century to the 15th century, the tales of medieval lovers echo through history, showing us just how devastating separation could be. Number 5. The Knight's Choice and the Sacrificing Hearts of Eliduc, Guildeluec and Guilliadun. The medieval landscape was a tapestry woven with strict codes of conduct. Especially for knights and noblewomen, loyalty, honor, and duty were paramount, often clashing violently with the wild, untamed force of love. The story of Eliduc, preserved in the lays of Marie de France, a remarkable poet of the 12th century, presents a unique and profoundly moving account of separation. It is not just about a knight torn between two loves, but also about the extraordinary generosity and self-sacrifice of two women who ultimately choose a path of profound spiritual separation for the happiness of others. This tale begins in ancient Brittany, a land steeped in legend and old customs, where the life of a knight was defined by service and the pursuit of adventure, often far from home. Eliduc was a knight of great renown in Brittany, known for his prowess in arms and his unwavering fidelity to his lord, a local king. The lay describes him as a man of impeccable character, widely respected and admired by all who knew him. He was a skilled hunter, a formidable fighter, and a wise counselor. He was also a married man, wed to Guildeluec, a lady of noble birth and gentle disposition. Their marriage, the lay suggests, was one of mutual respect and affection, built on the solid foundations of shared status and domestic harmony, a common arrangement in medieval nobility, where alliances and lineage often dictated such unions. For many years, their lives unfolded in pleasant tranquility, marked by the daily rhythms of court and country life, seemingly content and undisturbed by the passionate turmoil often found in other medieval romances. However, the fragile peace of Eliduc's life was shattered by a sudden, unforeseen turn of events. Through a twist of fate, the king, his lord, fell out of favor with Eliduc. The exact reasons for this dispute are left somewhat vague by Marie de France, perhaps emphasizing the arbitrary nature of courtly politics. The result was clear. Eliduc was banished from the court, forced to leave his home and his devoted wife behind. Such exile was a common, harsh punishment in the medieval period, severing a person from their land, their livelihood, and their social standing. It was a separation enforced by royal decree, a harsh, unexpected severing of ties that threw Eliduc into uncertainty. He set sail for the kingdom of Totnes, a port city in England, seeking new opportunities for service and hoping to regain his honor and status. Upon his arrival in Totnes, Eliduc quickly found a new lord, a powerful king who was embroiled in a conflict with a neighboring count. Eliduc's skill and valor soon became evident on the battlefield. He fought with remarkable courage and strategic insight, leading the king's forces to numerous victories. His reputation grew with each successful skirmish, and he became an indispensable figure in the foreign court. It was during this period of exile in a new land and amidst the clamor of war that Eliduc met Guilliadun. She was the daughter of the king. He served a young woman of exquisite beauty and captivating charm. The lay describes her as possessing a grace that drew all eyes and a spirit that was both gentle and intelligent. The initial connection between Eliduc and Guilliadun was subtle, a growing awareness of each other in the courtly setting. Guilliadun, witnessing Eliduc's bravery and noble demeanor, found herself drawn to him. She confessed her feelings to her chamberlain, a trusted confidant ascribing her intense admiration for the knight. This confession was a significant step, as direct expression of such feelings from a high-born lady was unusual and carried great risk. Eliduc in turn found himself increasingly enchanted by the princess. He had made a solemn vow to his wife, Guildeluec, before his departure, that he would remain faithful to her. This vow was a cornerstone of his knightly honor, a promise made in parting. Yet the deep affection and admiration he felt for Guilliadun began to challenge the very foundations of his loyalty. This growing connection, born of proximity and shared admiration, created an internal conflict within Eliduc, a silent battle between his heart's burgeoning desire and his sworn marital fidelity. The love between Eliduc and Guilliadun blossomed in secret, a clandestine affair that deepened with each passing day. The lay emphasizes their shared feelings, their mutual respect, and the genuine affection that grew between them. They met discreetly, exchanging heartfelt words and promises of devotion. Their bond became so profound that they promised themselves to each other, a spiritual union formed in the shadows of the court. Eliduc, despite his earlier vow to Guildeluec, found himself completely captivated by Guilliadun. His former loyalty seemingly overshadowed by this intense new love. The separation from his wife, initially a political exile, had now created a space for an emotional exile, a detachment from his former life and vows. However, the time for Eliduc's return to Brittany eventually came. King, his former lord, had need of him once more, and sent messengers requesting his return. This news, while restoring his status and allowing him to go home, presented Eliduc with an agonizing dilemma. He was bound by his earlier promise to return to his wife Guildeluec and to his homeland, but he was also deeply entangled in his new love for Guilliadun, who had given her heart entirely to him. The impending physical separation from Guilliadun filled them both with immense sorrow. Guilliadun, heartbroken at the thought of his departure, feared that she would die if he left her. Eliduc, equally distraught, swore that he would find a way for them to be together, or at least for him to remain connected to her, promised to take her with him, or to find a way to return for her. The moment of their physical separation was fraught with despair. Eliduc departed Tournai, leaving Guilliadun behind, promising to send for her. The journey home was undoubtedly filled with conflicting emotions for him. Relief at returning to his former life, but profound sadness for the love he had left behind. Guilliadun, left in Totnes, fell into a deep despair, her life drained of joy by his absence. Her love for Eliduc was so absolute that his departure brought her to the brink of death. She fell ill, consumed by grief, her spirit seemingly unable to bear the separation from the man she loved. Eliduc, meanwhile, returned to Brittany and to his wife Guildeluec. He resumed his life, but his heart remained with Guilliadun. He honored his obligations to Guildeluec, but he was unable to fully engage with her. He often sent messages to Guilliadun, attempting to keep their connection alive, though the risks were immense. One day, he decided he could no longer live without Guilliadun. He secretly sent a ship and a trusted servant to Totnes to retrieve her, intending to bring her back to Brittany and fulfill his promise. The lay describes Guilliadun's frail state when she was finally brought aboard Eliduc's ship. She was so weakened by sorrow and prolonged illness that she collapsed during the voyage, appearing to die. The sailors, seeing her lifeless form, suggested throwing her body overboard, a common practice for deceased passengers to prevent illness from spreading. But Eliduc, overcome with grief, absolutely refused. He insisted that her body be preserved, wrapped in fine cloths, and placed carefully in a hidden chapel near his castle upon their arrival. This was a desperate act, a refusal to accept the finality of their separation by death. He tended to her, keeping vigil, unwilling to let go of the hope of reunion even in death. His wife, Guildeluec, noticed Eliduc's profound sadness and his frequent secretive visits to the chapel. Filled with concern and a deep sense of intuition, she asked him about his unusual behavior. Eliduc, in a moment of despair and trust, finally confessed the entire story to her: his exile, his love for Guilliadun, her apparent death, and his desperate attempt to keep her body near him. He revealed the true cause of his sorrow, laying bare the secret he had carried for so long. Guildeluec, upon hearing the confession, was struck by the intensity of Eliduc's love for Guilliadun and the tragic fate of the young princess. Instead of anger or jealousy, Guildeluec felt immense pity for Guilliadun and a surprising sense of compassion for her rival. she decided to visit the chapel herself. There she discovered the exquisite beauty of Guilliadun, even in apparent death, and noticed a weasel which had been caught by the chapel's door, suddenly revived by a magical flower brought by its mate. Guildeluec, with remarkable quickness of thought and a spirit of empathy, used this flower to revive Guilliadun. The scene of Guilliadun's revival is a pivotal moment in the story. She awakens to find herself not with Eliduc, but with Guildeluec, his wife. The initial shock and confusion must have been immense. Guildeluec then explained everything to the bewildered Guilliadun, including Eliduc's undying love for her and the impossible situation they all found themselves in. It is at this point that the lay presents the most remarkable separation of all, one chosen freely and with profound self-sacrifice. Guildeluec, understanding the depth of the love between Eliduc and Guilliadun, made an astonishing decision. She recognized that Eliduc's heart truly belonged to Guilliadun, and that forcing him to remain with her Guildeluec would condemn him to a life of unhappiness and perpetual internal conflict. In an act of unparalleled generosity, she told Eliduc that she would withdraw from their marriage. She would become a nun, dedicating her life to God, thereby freeing Eliduc to marry Guilliadun and pursue the love that had so consumed him. This was a profound and irreversible separation, a relinquishment of her wifely role and secular life, chosen not out of resentment but out of a selfless desire for Eliduc's happiness. Guilliadun, deeply touched by Guildeluec's incredible sacrifice and compassion, also made a solemn vow. She understood the burden her love had placed on Eliduc and the generosity of Guildeluec. She, too, chose a path of spiritual devotion. Following Guildeluec's lead, Guilliadun decided to become a nun. This was another act of profound separation, a conscious choice to renounce worldly love and embrace a life of religious piety. She chose this path, not out of despair, but from a place of gratitude and a desire to honor the extraordinary kindness shown to her. Thus both women, in an astonishing testament to empathy and self-sacrifice, entered convents. Guildeluec, the first wife, went to a nunnery she herself founded and became the abbess, dedicating her life to spiritual work and charitable deeds. Guilliadun, the beloved, joined her, entering the same convent and living a life of pious devotion alongside her former rival. This was a separation not just from Eliduc, but from the entire secular world, from all earthly desires and connections. It was a separation chosen for the sake of love, yet it paradoxically led them away from romantic love and towards a spiritual union. Eliduc, now free of his marriage vows due to Guildeluec's entry into the religious life. But the lay tells us that he was so profoundly moved by the immense sacrifice of both women, so overwhelmed by their generosity and their selfless choices, that he too decided to renounce worldly life. He chose to become a monk, separating himself from both romantic love and the knightly life. He joined a monastery, embracing a life of quiet contemplation and devotion. The ending of Eliduc's story is a series of separations, each chosen with purpose. The initial political exile separated Eliduc from his wife. Blossoming of a new love created an emotional separation from his vows. The apparent death of Guilliadun was a separation by fate. The most profound separations are the ones chosen. Guildeluec's departure to a convent, Guilliadun's subsequent decision to join her, and Eliduc's ultimate choice to become a monk. All three characters separated themselves from the world, from romantic love, and from their previous lives, each finding a different form of peace in their spiritual devotion. It is a heartbreaking narrative, not for its tragedy of death, but for its profound demonstration of how love, duty, and sacrifice can lead individuals to choose paths of ultimate spiritual separation from all that was once familiar. Number 4. The Childhood Sweethearts and the Cruel Hand of Fate in Flores and Blanchefleur. The medieval world, while romanticized in tales of chivalry, was also a place of harsh realities, where social standing, wealth, and power often dictated the course of individual lives, particularly for those not of the highest nobility. The romance of Flores and Blanchefleur, a widely popular story across medieval Europe from the 12th century onwards, offers a poignant glimpse into the devastating impact of forced separation. It is a tale that highlights the resilience of true affection against the cruel machinations of a world driven by status and greed. This narrative focuses on a separation that is both sudden and prolonged, challenging the very bonds of childhood love with an almost insurmountable geographical distance and social barrier. The story begins in the exotic setting of Spain, during the height of the Moorish presence on the Iberian Peninsula. Flores, the heir to the Saracen king of Spain, and Blanchefleur, a Christian slave girl of noble Frankish birth, grew up together in the royal palace. Their mothers, the queen and a captured countess, shared a deep friendship which allowed their children to be raised almost as siblings. From their earliest years, Flores and Blanchefleur were inseparable. They were taught side by side, sharing lessons in reading and writing, developing a bond that transcended their differing social statuses. The lay emphasizes their shared innocence and the pure, uncomplicated nature of their affection. Their love was not born of courtly artifice or chivalric ideals, but from the simple, genuine connection of two children growing up together, forming a deep attachment that ripened into profound romantic love as they matured into adolescence. As they grew older, their childhood affection deepened into a passionate, undeniable love. They spent every moment they could together, their hearts entwined, dreaming of a future where they would always be united. Their love, however, was a secret, hidden from the King Flores' father. The disparity in their birth and religion made their union unthinkable in the eyes of the royal court. Blanchefleur was a Christian slave, while Flores was the Muslim heir to a powerful throne. Such a marriage would be seen as a grave insult to the royal lineage and a betrayal of religious and cultural identity. The young lovers, despite their deep emotional connection, knew the precariousness of their situation. They understood, perhaps intuitively, that their love defied the rigid societal norms of their time. The king, observing the growing closeness between his son and the slave girl, became increasingly alarmed. He recognized the depth of their affection, and to his aristocratic mind, it was an unacceptable attachment. He feared that Flores, blinded by love, would seek to marry Blanchefleur, thereby bringing shame and disgrace upon the royal family and jeopardizing the succession. His priority was the purity of his lineage and the power of his kingdom, not the happiness of his son. Driven by a desire to preserve his dynastic ambitions and uphold social hierarchy, the king devised a cruel and calculating plan to separate the lovers forever. King's scheme was deceptively simple and brutally effective. He waited until Flores was away on a hunting trip, a common pastime for young nobles, providing the perfect opportunity for the king to act without his son's immediate interference. While Flores was absent, the king ordered Blanchefleur to be seized and sold. He arranged for her to be secretly sold to a group of traveling merchants who were bound for a distant land. The sale was carried out swiftly and discreetly without any fanfare or public notice. The intent was to remove Blanchefleur so far away that Flores would never be able to find her. King paid the merchants a large sum of money, ensuring their silence and their cooperation in taking Blanchefleur to a far-off destination. The separation was sudden and violent. Blanchefleur was torn from her home, her familiar surroundings, and everything she had ever known. She was dragged away without a chance to say goodbye, without any warning, her cries unheard by Flores, who was away in the distant forests. The moment of her forced departure was a stark, brutal severing of her life from Flores's, a moment of profound despair as she was led away into the unknown. The Queen Blanchefleur's adoptive mother was heartbroken by the king's cruel act, but she was powerless to intervene. When Flores returned from his hunt and discovered Blanchefleur's disappearance, he was plunged into an agony of grief and despair. The palace, once filled with their shared laughter and secret whispers, now felt empty and cold. He confronted his parents, demanding to know what had happened to his beloved. King, attempting to deceive his son, initially claimed that Blanchefleur had died. He even presented a false grave, hoping to convince Flores that his love was irrevocably lost. This deception was designed to crush Flores's spirit and make him abandon his quest. Flores, however, was not easily fooled. His intuition and the depth of his love told him that Blanchefleur was alive. Overwhelmed by sorrow, he considered taking his own life, but a glimmer of hope, perhaps whispered by his grieving mother, led him to uncover the truth. Blanchefleur had been sold. Queen, unable to bear her son's torment, eventually revealed the true nature of the king's actions, confirming that Blanchefleur was alive, but had been sold and taken far away. This revelation, while painful, ignited a renewed determination within Flores. His despair transformed into a burning resolve to find Blanchefleur, no matter the cost or the distance. The separation marked the beginning of Flores's arduous and perilous journey. He left his royal life behind, abandoning the comforts of the palace and his princely duties. He took only a small retinue of trusted servants and set out on a quest to find Blanchefleur, traveling through distant lands facing countless dangers and uncertainties. His journey was a testament to the strength of his love, a relentless pursuit across geographical and cultural boundaries. He encountered diverse peoples and customs, always following the faint trail of information about the merchants who had taken Blanchefleur. His wealth helped him gain passage and information, but it was his unwavering devotion that fueled his progress. As Flores journeyed, he learned that Blanchefleur had been sold to the Emir of Babylon, a powerful ruler who possessed a magnificent tower guarded by a vast garden, where he kept a collection of the most beautiful maidens from across the world. These maidens were kept in luxurious seclusion, their lives dedicated to serving the Emir's pleasure, with only one chosen each year to be his bride. He knew that if he did not reach Blanchefleur soon, she might be chosen by the Emir, and their reunion would become impossible. The stakes of their separation were now higher than ever, a race against time and the Emir's desires. Upon arriving in Babylon, Flores faced the immense challenge of entering the heavily guarded tower. The city was a maze of unfamiliar sights and sounds, and the tower itself was impregnable. He used his intelligence and cunning, devising a clever plan to infiltrate the tower. He befriended the gatekeeper, a wise and sympathetic man, by bribing him generously. Convinced the gatekeeper to allow him to hide within a basket of flowers that was regularly delivered to the maidens in the tower. This disguise was a daring risk, relying on the gatekeeper's complicity and the element of surprise. Once inside the tower, Flores found himself in a labyrinthine world of women, a place of opulence and confinement. He was hidden amongst the other maidens, searching desperately for Blanchefleur. The maidens lived in separate chambers, and the strict rules made it difficult for him to move freely or openly search for her. His disguise as a flower delivery system was a means of entry, but not freedom of movement. He navigated the complex social dynamics of the tower, maintaining his cover while always keeping his ultimate goal in mind. It was by a stroke of fate, or perhaps the guiding hand of destiny, that Flores stumbled upon Blanchefleur. He had hidden in a particular chamber, and it was the custom for the maidens to share a bed. As he lay concealed, he felt a presence beside him. He reached out in the darkness and found a hand. The touch was unmistakable. It was Blanchefleur. Their reunion, after such a long and agonizing separation, was a moment of overwhelming emotion. They embraced in silence, tears of joy and relief streaming down their faces, their hearts overflowing with an unspoken understanding of all they had endured. However, their reunion was immediately fraught with danger. The Emir's rules were absolute, and any breach of his harem's sanctity was punishable by death. They were discovered by the Emir's attendants, who reported their presence to the ruler. The Emir, enraged by the violation of his sanctuary and the defiance of his authority, condemned them both to death. He intended to make an example of them, to show that his rules could not be broken. At the moment of their execution, as they stood before the Emir's judgment, ready to face their fate, Flores and Blanchefleur displayed a profound nobility and willingness to die for each other. Each pleaded for the other's life, offering to sacrifice their own to spare their beloved. This display of selfless love, their unwavering devotion, even in the face of death, deeply moved the emir and his court. Their willingness to die for each other was so powerful that it stirred the hearts of even the most hardened officials. The emir, seeing their pure and selfless devotion, was unexpectedly moved by their plea. He recognized the strength of their love, a force he had not anticipated. His heart was softened and he chose to show mercy. Instead of executing them, he pardoned Flores and Blanchefleur. This was an astonishing reversal, a testament to the power of their love to transcend even the most rigid laws and vengeful intentions. The story concludes with Flores and Blanchefleur marrying and returning to Spain. Flores eventually inherited his father's throne, and Blanchefleur became his queen. Their forced separation, which had driven them apart for so long and led them through such perilous journeys, ultimately strengthened their bond and proved the depth of their love. Their reunion was hard-won, but the years of separation, the trials faced, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for each other made their eventual happiness all the more profound. The tale of Flores and Blanchefleur is a testament to the enduring power of first love, the devastating impact of forced separation, and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit when fueled by unwavering affection. The separation was not merely a physical distance, but a deep emotional and social chasm, overcome only by the sheer force of their combined will and a fortunate turn of events. Number 3. The ill-fated potion and the agony of eternal duty in Tristan and Iseult. The Arthurian world, a rich tapestry of chivalry, magic, and often heartbreak romance, is perhaps best known for the tale of Tristan and Iseult. This story, originating in Celtic legend and retold by numerous medieval poets, including Thomas of Britain, plunges its lovers into a tragic separation. Orchestrated by fate itself, it is a tale of a love potion, a binding enchantment, and the relentless, unavoidable conflict between an all-consuming passion and the unbreakable bonds of feudal loyalty and marital duty. The separation here is a living death, a constant awareness of a love that can never be truly consummated in the light of day. The story begins in Cornwall, a rugged wild land ruled by King Mark, Tristan's uncle. Tristan, a skilled warrior, musician, and hunter, was a loyal and brave knight. Iseult, also known as Iseult the Fair, was the daughter of the King of Ireland, renowned for her beauty and her knowledge of healing arts. Their paths crossed when Tristan, severely wounded after a battle with the Irish knight Morholt, sought healing in Ireland. Iseult, using her considerable skills, nursed him back to health. During this initial encounter, a subtle attraction began to form, a foreshadowing of the powerful emotions that would soon overwhelm them. Later, Tristan returned to Ireland, this time on a mission for his uncle, King Mark. Mark, influenced by his jealous barons, sought to marry a woman as beautiful as a golden hair found by a swallow. Tristan, recognizing the hair belonged to Iseult, bravely undertook the perilous journey to secure her hand for his uncle. This act of duty, designed to forge a political alliance and secure peace between Cornwall and Ireland, ironically set the stage for the greatest tragedy of their lives. Tristan succeeded in his quest, but the journey back to Cornwall was fraught with an unforeseen magical intervention. The separation, or rather the fatal entanglement that led to a life of forced separation, began on the ship journey from Ireland to Cornwall. Iseult's mother, a sorceress, had prepared a powerful love potion intended for King Mark and Iseult. This potion was meant to bind them together in an unbreakable love, ensuring the success of the political marriage. She entrusted it to Brangæna, Iseult's loyal handmaiden, with strict instructions to give it only to Mark and Iseult on their wedding night. However, through a devastating error, Tristan and Iseult accidentally drank the potion together. They mistook it for ordinary wine, a simple, innocent mistake with catastrophic consequences. The moment the potion passed their lips, their fate was sealed. An uncontrollable, overwhelming love ignited within them, binding their souls together with an intensity that defied all reason and duty. This was not a love born of choice or courtship, but an enchantment, a magical force that compelled them into an irresistible bond. The physical separation from others was not the immediate issue, rather it was a separation from their former selves, from their duties and from the societal norms that governed their lives. They were now bound to each other, but Iseult was promised to Mark upon their arrival in Cornwall. Iseult married King Mark. The love potion, however, ensured that her heart and Tristan's remained irrevocably entwined. Their marriage to Mark was a constant, agonizing reminder of their forbidden love. They lived in the same court, under the watchful eye of the king and his suspicious barons, forced to maintain an outward appearance of propriety, while their hearts burned with a shared secret passion. This forced proximity, coupled with the profound emotional distance from their true desires, was a form of constant living separation. They were together yet, eternally apart from what they truly yearned for. The narrative of Tristan and Iseult's love is filled with desperate attempts to conceal their affair from King Mark and his suspicious courtiers. They employed elaborate deceptions, relied on the loyalty of Brangane, and often risked their lives to steal moments together. The love potion compelled them, driving them to acts of daring and subterfuge, making their lives a constant performance of duty versus desire. Each stolen glance, each secret meeting was a painful reminder of the conventional life and happiness they could never openly share. Constant threat of discovery hung over them, a dark cloud that ensured their separation from peace and openness. King Mark, despite his love for Iseult, grew increasingly suspicious of Tristan and his queen. His barons, envious of Tristan's prowess and influence, fueled these suspicions, repeatedly attempting to expose the lovers. There were numerous occasions where their affair was almost discovered, leading to trials and accusations. Each time, Tristan and Iseult, with the help of quick wits and sometimes miraculous interventions, managed to escape formal condemnation. One famous instance involved them sleeping with a sword between them, creating a physical barrier to imply innocence even while their hearts remained bound. Despite their cunning and desperate measures, the truth eventually became undeniable. The constant pressure, the rumors, and the overwhelming evidence finally broke through Mark's denial. The exact moment of their discovery varies in the different versions of the tale, but the outcome is always the same. King Mark was forced to acknowledge the affair. This discovery led to the ultimate, heartbreaking separation. Mark banished Tristan from Cornwall. This was a direct physical separation, tearing Tristan away from Iseult, the woman he was magically bound to love, and from the court where he had served his uncle with such loyalty. Tristan became an exile, wandering through foreign lands, his heart perpetually aching for Iseult. He roamed through Brittany, eventually marrying another Iseult of the White Hands. Out of duty, and perhaps a desperate attempt to find solace. But this marriage was a hollow echo, as he could never consummate it, his heart and desire irrevocably tied to Iseult the Fair. This act was another form of separation, a spiritual divorce from any chance of a normal, fulfilling relationship with another woman. Iseult, meanwhile, remained in Cornwall, bound to King Mark by marriage, but enduring a profound emotional separation from Tristan. She lived a life of constant longing, her heart a prisoner of the love potion and her duty to the king. The court became a cage, and her marriage a gilded trap. Even when she was physically present with Mark, her spirit was always with Tristan, living a life of internal exile. The final, devastating separation came with Tristan's death. Wounded by a poisoned spear in Brittany, he sent for Iseult the Fair, knowing only her healing skills could save him. He arranged a signal with his messenger. If Iseult was on board the ship, the sail would be white. If not, it would be black. His jealous wife Iseult of the White Hands, seeing the returning ship, falsely told Tristan that the sail was black. Tristan, overcome with despair at the thought of Iseult not coming, believing she had abandoned him, died of heartbreak before she could reach him. His last breath was a sigh for Iseult, and his death was a final, tragic separation from the woman he was destined to love. When Iseult the Fair arrived and found Tristan dead, she collapsed upon his body, her heart shattered by the ultimate separation. She too died, her spirit unable to endure life without him. The lay describes them as being buried side by side, and from their graves a vine and a rosebush grew, intertwining their branches over the chapel where they lay, a final, symbolic union that even death could not break. The tale of Tristan and Iseult is a powerful narrative of forced love, the relentless demands of duty, and the ultimate heartbreaking separation that resulted from a single, accidental drink. Their entire lives were a series of separations, from choice, from societal acceptance, from peace, and finally from life itself, a tragic testament to a love that was too powerful for the world to contain. Number 2. The Forbidden Love and the Shattered Kingdom of Arthur. Guinevere and Lancelot. The Arthurian legends, particularly as consolidated and retold by Sir Thomas Malory in his 15th century compilation, La Morte d'Arthur, represent the pinnacle of medieval romance and tragedy. At the heart of this epic saga lies the devastating love triangle involving King Arthur, Queen Guinevere, and Sir Lancelot. This story is not merely about personal betrayal, but about the complete unraveling of an entire kingdom. A separation that tears apart loyalty, friendship, and the very ideals of chivalry. It is a tale of love, honor, and duty colliding with catastrophic consequences, leading to the ultimate collapse of a golden age. King Arthur, the legendary ruler of Camelot, established the Round Table, an order of knights dedicated to justice, chivalry, and the pursuit of noble deeds. His reign was depicted as a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity, a time when heroes flourished and ideals were upheld. Arthur's marriage to Queen Guinevere was a central pillar of his kingdom, a political alliance that symbolized the stability and legitimacy of his rule. Guinevere was renowned for her beauty and grace, a queen who presided over Camelot's court with regal dignity. Their union was meant to secure the future of the kingdom and embody the harmonious ideal of Arthur's reign. Sir Lancelot du Lac was the greatest knight of the Round Table, admired by all for his unparalleled skill in combat, his unwavering courage, and his devotion to Arthur. He was considered the epitome of chivalry, his loyalty to his king absolute. However, Lancelot, despite his noble qualities, fell deeply in love with Queen Guinevere. This love was not merely admiration. It was a profound, passionate, and ultimately forbidden affection. Guinevere, in turn, found herself drawn to Lancelot, captivated by his strength, his valor, and his devotion to her. Their love was a secret hidden beneath the surface of courtly etiquette and formal respect, a dangerous undercurrent threatening to destabilize the very foundations of Camelot. The love between Lancelot and Guinevere developed gradually, nurtured by proximity, shared admiration, and the intense, almost spiritual bonds of courtly love. They spent countless hours together, their conversations deepening their emotional connection, their gazes lingering. Their affair was a profound betrayal of King Arthur, not just as a husband, but as a king whose trust and friendship Lancelot so fiercely claimed to uphold. The secrecy of their love was a constant burden, a perpetual source of anxiety and guilt, yet the pull of their affection was too strong to resist. Their relationship was a violation of two of the most sacred oaths of the medieval world: the knight's loyalty to his king and the sanctity of marriage. For many years, the affair remained a closely guarded secret, known only to a few trusted confidants, like Lancelot's cousin Sir Bors. However, rumors and suspicions began to circulate among the envious and less honorable knights of the Round Table. Knights like Sir Agravain and Sir Mordred, motivated by jealousy and a desire to bring down Lancelot actively, sought to expose the affair. They saw it as a means to undermine Arthur's authority and shatter the unity of the Round Table. Their relentless pursuit of proof eventually led to the inevitable confrontation. The moment of discovery was swift and devastating. Agravain and Mordred, along with a group of their allies, ambushed Lancelot when he was in Guinevere's chambers. Lancelot, taken by surprise but still a formidable warrior, fought his way out, killing several of the knights. This violent encounter made the affair public, tearing down the carefully constructed facade that had protected their secret for so long. The news spread like wildfire through Camelot, shattering the peace and trust that had defined Arthur's court. The exposure of the affair led to an immediate and profound separation, not just of Lancelot from Guinevere, but of the entire Round Table. King Arthur, devastated by the betrayal of his queen and his most trusted knight, was compelled by law and honor to act. Queen Guinevere, according to the laws of the time, was condemned to death by burning for treason and adultery. Lancelot, heartbroken but resolved, launched a daring rescue attempt to save Guinevere from the stake. This rescue was a chaotic, bloody affair where Lancelot, in his desperation, accidentally killed several unarmed knights of the Round Table, including Sir Gaheris and Sir Gareth, the beloved brothers of Sir Gawain. Sir Gawain, consumed by grief and a burning desire for vengeance for his slain brothers, demanded that Arthur pursue Lancelot and wage war against him. Arthur, torn between his love for Lancelot and his duty to uphold justice and honor, reluctantly agreed. Lancelot fled to his lands in France, taking Guinevere with him, but the kingdom of Camelot was plunged into civil war. The separation between Lancelot and Guinevere and the rest of Camelot was now a full-blown war. Arthur led his forces across the sea to besiege Lancelot's castle. The war was brutal and destructive, pitting former friends and comrades against each other. During this prolonged conflict, a new and even more insidious separation occurred within Camelot itself. Mordred, Arthur's illegitimate son and a treacherous knight, seized the opportunity presented by Arthur's absence. He usurped the throne, claiming Guinevere as his queen and plunging Britain into further chaos and civil strife. Upon hearing of Mordred's rebellion, Arthur was forced to abandon his siege of Lancelot's castle and return to Britain to reclaim his kingdom. This was a separation of military fronts, but also a strategic one. Forced by the internal collapse of his realm, Arthur and Mordred met in a series of devastating battles. The final battle, the Battle of Camlan, was a catastrophic confrontation that led to the deaths of almost all the remaining knights of the Round Table, and ultimately to Arthur's own mortal wounding. The immediate aftermath of the battle brought the final, heartbreaking separations. Queen Guinevere, realizing the full extent of the tragedy her love for Lancelot had wrought, and despairing over the destruction of Arthur's kingdom, made a profound choice. She separated herself from all worldly desires and entered a convent, becoming a nun. She chose a life of penance and devotion, forever renouncing her queenly status and her love for Lancelot. This was a complete and utter separation from her past life, a desperate attempt to find redemption in a shattered world. Lancelot, upon hearing of Arthur's death and Guinevere's decision to enter the convent, was utterly broken. He traveled to the convent, begging Guinevere to forgive him and to allow him to see her. Guinevere refused, asserting that their love had destroyed Arthur and Camelot, and that they must now dedicate their lives to God. She told him to leave her and live a life of penance. Overwhelmed by grief and remorse, Lancelot followed her example. He too separated himself from the world, renouncing his knighthood and entering a monastery. He lived a life of austerity and devotion, never seeing Guinevere again. The story ends with the complete and total separation of the lovers and the destruction of the kingdom they had unknowingly undermined. Arthur is taken to Avalon, separated from the world of mortals. Guinevere and Lancelot live out their days in separate religious orders, forever separated from each other and from the lives they once led. The Round Table is shattered, its ideals lying in ruin. This tale illustrates how a forbidden love left unchecked can lead to a cascade of betrayals and wars, culminating in the complete separation of a noble society, forever haunted by the destruction they unintentionally caused. Number 1. The Scholar, the Student, and the Blade. Heloise and Abelard. In the bustling, intellectual heart of 12th century Paris, a love story unfolded that would become one of the most enduring and tragic tales of separation in medieval history. It is the story of Peter Abelard, a brilliant and controversial philosopher and theologian, and Heloise, his exceptionally intelligent and learned student. Theirs was a love born of shared intellect and profound mutual admiration, but it was brutally severed by societal norms, violent revenge, and a crushing weight of religious authority. The separation of Heloise and Abelard was not just physical, but deeply personal, intellectual, and spiritual, leaving a permanent scar on their lives and challenging the very definitions of love, freedom, and devotion. Peter Abelard was perhaps the most renowned intellectual of his time, a master of dialectic and philosophy whose lectures drew thousands of students from across Europe. He was known for his sharp mind, his eloquent speech, and his often provocative theological arguments, which frequently brought him into conflict with established church authorities. He lived a life centered around scholarly pursuit and public debate. Heloise was the niece of Canon Fulbert, a respected cleric in Notre Dame. She was extraordinary for her time, possessing an astonishing intellect, fluent in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, and deeply learned in philosophy and theology. Her uncle, proud of her accomplishments, sought the best possible tutor for her. It was in this context that Abelard, already famous, was invited to tutor Heloise in Canon Fulbert's own home. The arrangement was seemingly perfect. Abelard gained access to lodging near his school, and Heloise received instruction from the most brilliant mind of the age. Their shared passion for learning, their intellectual compatibility, and their daily proximity soon sparked a forbidden attraction. Traditional student-teacher relationship quickly transformed into something far more intimate. Abelard, in his autobiographical work, Historia Calamitatum, The Story of My Misfortunes, openly admitted to abusing his position, consumed by passion for Heloise. Their intellectual discussions soon gave way to physical intimacy. Their love affair blossomed in secret, a dangerous liaison carried out under the very roof of Heloise's unsuspecting uncle. Abelard wrote that, under the pretext of study, we spent our hours in love, and the time that was left over from our lessons we filled with the most tender declarations. Heloise became pregnant, a devastating revelation in the strict social and religious climate of the medieval period, particularly for a cleric and a young woman from a respectable family. The pregnancy exposed their secret, shattering the carefully constructed facade of their academic relationship. The discovery of Heloise's pregnancy by Canon Fulbert plunged all involved into crisis. Fulbert, feeling deeply dishonored and publicly shamed by Abelard's betrayal of his trust and the ruin of his niece's reputation, was consumed by rage. Abelard, seeking to mitigate the damage and protect Heloise, proposed a secret marriage. This was a desperate attempt to legitimize their child and preserve some semblance of honor, though it was a fraught decision. As marriage was forbidden for clerics who sought advancement within the church, Heloise, surprisingly, resisted the idea of marriage. She argued passionately that marriage would hinder Abelard's academic and ecclesiastical career, believing that he was destined for greatness and that a wife and family would be a burden. She also articulated her preference for love over legal bonds. However, Abelard insisted, driven by a sense of responsibility and a desire to appease Fulbert. They were secretly married, with only a few witnesses present, hoping to keep the union hidden from the public eye, but the secrecy was short-lived. Fulbert, still consumed by bitterness and a sense of enduring dishonor, began to reveal details of the marriage publicly, seemingly breaking his promise to keep it quiet. He perhaps did this to further shame Abelard or to ensure that the marriage was known and therefore binding. In response, Abelard sent Heloise to a convent in Argenteuil, a move intended to protect her from her uncle's rage and the public scandal, but one that further inflamed Fulbert's fury. This was the first of many separations, a forced physical distance meant to create a barrier against a hostile world. Fulbert, believing that Abelard had abandoned Heloise and was trying to rid himself of her by sending her to a convent, orchestrated a horrific act of revenge. He hired a group of thugs who, under the cover of night, broke into Abelard's lodging. They castrated Abelard, a brutal and irreversible act of emasculation that utterly destroyed him physically and emotionally. This savage mutilation marked the definitive, most violent separation of Abelard from his former life, his masculinity, and his capacity for worldly love. He was utterly broken. His once celebrated intellect, now overshadowed by this profound personal tragedy. The humiliation and physical trauma were so immense that Abelard, believing his life was ruined, sought refuge in monastic life. He became a monk at the Abbey of Saint Denis, separating himself from the secular world and its temptations. He urged Heloise, still at Argenteuil, to also take vows and become a nun. Although Heloise had expressed her love for Abelard with an intensity that transcended marriage, her obedience to his wishes, fueled by her deep devotion and, perhaps, a sense of shared penance, led her to accept the veil. This was a forced separation from her chosen life, from the possibility of a conventional future, and from the man she loved, though she entered the religious life with a profound sense of submission. Thus, both Abelard and Heloise entered religious orders, leading lives of forced spiritual separation from each other and from the world. Abelard pursued his theological studies within the monastery, but his controversial views continued to cause him trouble, leading to further periods of exile and condemnation. Heloise, a woman of extraordinary capability, quickly rose through the ranks at Argenteuil and later became the abbess of the Paraclete, a monastery founded by Abelard. Their physical separation was complete and permanent, broken only by a series of famous letters exchanged over many years. These letters, which constitute one of the most remarkable literary records of medieval love, are a testament to their enduring complex bond and their profound separation. Abelard's first letter, the Historia Calamitatum, recounts the story of his misfortunes, including his relationship with Heloise. Heloise, upon reading it, responded with letters that poured out her heart, revealing the depth of her enduring love for him, her resentment at the forced separation, and her struggles with her monastic vows. She confessed that she entered the religious life out of obedience to him, not out of true spiritual calling, and that her thoughts were still tormented by their past intimacy. Abelard's responses, while acknowledging their past and her suffering, often focused on theological matters, urging her to find solace in God and to accept their separation as divine will. He encouraged her to focus on her duties as abbess and to lead her nuns in piety. Heloise, in her letters, continued to grapple with the tension between her worldly love for Abelard and her spiritual obligations, demonstrating a heartbreaking intellectual and emotional honesty. She yearned for his presence, for intellectual companionship, and for an acknowledgement of the intensity of her original love, even as she performed her duties as an abbess with diligence and intelligence. The letters reveal a profound and agonizing separation. They were physically apart, their bodies mutilated or veiled, their lives consecrated to God. Yet, Heloise's letters in particular show that her heart remained entwined with Abelard's. Their separation was not an end to their connection, but a transformation of it into a persistent, sorrowful, intellectual, and emotional dialogue across monastic walls. They continued to influence each other's lives and thoughts, even as they remained irrevocably apart. Their lives ended in separate monastic foundations, Abelard dying in 1142 and Heloise much later in 1164. In a final act of enduring connection across the chasm of their separation, their bodies were eventually reunited, unburied together at the Paraclete, and later moved to Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris. A testament to a love that, despite its tragic circumstances and brutal separations, refused to be extinguished. Their story remains a powerful reminder of how human passions, societal constraints, and brutal acts of revenge can lead to an agonizing and permanent separation, leading to extraordinary and permanent separation.